welcome to the channel. I'm back to break down this 4-game ALDS and NLDS playoff round DFS slate. Before we get into it, I have released multiple Patreon packages over there on Patreon. Links in the description. You can go ahead and check those out. If you're interested, you get access to things like my starting pitcher data sheet, my hot hitter stat guys data, my team hitting data, my bullpen data, my power rankings, and my cheat sheet all throughout the playoffs. And this is something that I'm planning on being flexible with the playoffs. With the circumstances, I know right now we're going to have a decent slate of games every day because there's not going to be any off days. These teams are going to be playing every single day, so today much better than the 2-game slate that we had yesterday. But as we go along throughout these playoffs, I'm thinking I might do some more things along the lines of some lineup builder shows and things like that. So leave your feedback in the comments if you're interested in that, and even some advice of what you'd like to see on the channel. I appreciate you guys tuning in. You can follow me over on Twitter at KJK DFS. Before we continue, please hit the likes button. Most importantly, hit that subscribe button. It's something I always forget to say, and I'm going to make myself say it because it's going to help me tremendously, and I'm going to try to help you guys day in and day out becoming better MLB DFS players and just winning money on a daily basis. So that's all for the intro. Let's go ahead and start breaking down this slate. As always, I like to go ahead and sort my sheet by strikeout rate. It's Fantasy Sports. We get points for strikeouts. And the top guy on the slate today is that Tyler Glasnow taking on these New York Yankees. He comes in with a 32.4% K rate, a 12.4 swing strike rate. Very, very impressive. He's got a 33.4% hard hit rate, a 33.4% K rate against righties, and then a 31.3% K rate against lefties. As you can see, his ground ball, fly ball, wOBA, hard hit rate, slugging is very, very impressive against left-handed hitters, whereas righties it's not so as impressive, which actually isn't going to fare him as well against this New York Yankees lineup because they are a very right-handed heavy team. But when looking at the Vegas lines, he does come in as a 122 favorite. So Vegas likes him in the matchup against Diego Garcia to pick up this win today. So he is the favorite pitcher. He does have the strikeout upside. The only thing we have to look at is his struggles against righties, which may not fare him the best against these Yankees. However, I tend to think he will go out there and get a strikeout. It's just a matter of maybe we can pick out some guys in this lineup that are going to hit some solo bombs. So we'll get to that when we're done breaking down the pitching and we get over to bats. But second on the slate is that Walker Bueller taking on the San Diego Padres. Bueller has a 28.6% K rate, 11.7 swing strike rate. The ground ball, the fly ball, the walk rate, it's all pretty good. And then against righties, he does have a 28.2% K rate. And against lefties, he comes in with a 29% K rate. So Walker Bueller, definitely an elite pitcher in the league today. He gets to take on the San Diego Padres. And looking at my team hitting data sheet, we can see that the Padres come in with a, let's see if I can find him here, a 21.1% K rate. So they're actually very impressive on the K rate category. You know, they're a team that doesn't really strike out a ton. I think that's right-handed pitchers specifically. Or, you know what? Yeah, so we had said he does have a 28.2% K rate against righties, and then he does have a 29% K rate against lefties. And the Padres are pretty even throughout their lineup as far as righties and lefties are concerned. So anyways, I don't know. Got a little off track there, just thinking out loud. Team hitting data, you see they don't really strike out a ton against right-handed pitching. They are pretty solid across the board. And so my point being, the matchup isn't the greatest for Bueller, but when you're looking at his stuff, he does come in as the second best pitcher on the slate. And you can definitely have interest in him today. It's just the matchup and whether you want to target it. Chris Paddock comes in third with a 26% K rate, but he has to take on these Los Angeles Dodgers, which is not an ideal matchup. He's got a 29.7% K rate against righties and then a 22.5% K rate against lefties. And he really struggles in the hard contact category. So while he does excel in the strikeout category, he's not so great in the hard contact category. So we'll get to that when we get to bats. But I have a feeling that Chris Paddock's going to be a guy that we're going to want to target today. And then from there on, to be honest with you, it's kind of tough because these aren't exactly the elite pitchers that we're used to seeing on a playoff slate. I mean, you have Framber Valdez, who's respectable, Max Fried, who's respectable, but these K rates aren't really like elite K rates for guys like this. So, it's going to be interesting from here on out breaking down who we're going to want to target. We have a 24.2% K rate against righties for Max Fried, and then a 27.8% K rate against lefties. So he really excels against that the lefty-lefty matchup. And the Marlins aren't really going to supply a ton of that for him. And then, Framber Valdez at 8-9 probably is going to be the, next chalkiest guy outside of the Glasnow and Bueller at the top of the slate. I'd like to think, because Chris Paddock's taking on the Los Angeles Dodgers and Framber Valdez gets the Oakland A's, which isn't exactly the most ideal matchup, but he really excels in the ground ball and fly ball rate, and I think that'll probably increase his ownership. Same thing with Max Fried. These guys don't really have a ton of strikeout upside, but they're really good in the ground ball and fly ball. He's got 29.6% K rate against lefties, so they're almost identical pitchers. They excel on the lefty-lefty matchup. They're not going to get any in the matchups they're in. And when specifically looking at my team hitting data sheet and breaking down these matchups, you can see the Athletics do have their fair share of strikeouts with a 24% clip. But specifically against lefties, it actually does tick up to a 26.3% K rate. So that's interesting. And then when you're looking at the Marlins, they have a 24.2% K rate against lefties versus a 5.4. So when we actually break down the numbers, I would say, Framber Valdez does have the most appeal because, as I had pointed out, the A's strikeout rate does tick up against left-handed pitching. But he's only got a 20.6% K rate against righties. So do with that what you will. Kind of tough because you're dealing with a 4% decrease in strikeout rate against right-handed hitting in Framber Valdez, but he has a better matchup. So these are the things we have to think about. And then when we're factoring in price tags on DraftKings, Max Fried is only 7.7 compared to Framber Valdez 8.9, and Max Fried is a 196 favorite. So I would say final conclusion is I'd probably prefer Max Fried due to the price decrease and the fact that he's favored by Vegas. But that's definitely an interesting debate there. And then I'll go quickly through these last few guys, and then we'll get to bats. Deivi Garcia taking on the Tampa Bay Rays. He has a 22.6% K rate, a 27.8% K rate against righties, and then a 16.4% K rate against lefties. But he's very good in the WOBA, the hard hit rate, the slugging against lefties, and he struggles more against righties. So it's going to be interesting to see what kind of a lineup that these Tampa Bay Rays roll out there, because they can definitely throw some righties your way, and they can definitely throw some lefties. And it's looking like they're kind of going with they're going to be sticking with the same lineup they had in Game 1, where they'll have Yandy Diaz, Randy Arozarena, Manuel Margot for those righties, and then Willy Adames and Mike Zunino, who aren't exactly the most threatening righties. Arozarena's been great, so he'd be my favorite one, but it's not like Yandy Diaz is the guy we really worry about against right hitting, but he would be valid as well just because of Deivi's splits issues. And then, Shamanea, I'm not even going to touch on, I don't think, because I don't think I want to play him today. Taking on these Houston Astros, I don't think he has the strikeout upside. These Houston Astros don't strike out. I think he could go out there and get you through some innings, but I don't think he has any strikeout upside, so I'm probably not going to play him today. And then Sandy Alcatera is a guy I could play against the Atlanta Braves. He might be low, and he has a 19% K rate, but he's very good in the ground ball and the fly ball against right-handed hitting. Solid across the board, and then against lefties, that's where he starts to struggle a little bit. So he's a guy that's a little splitsy, and this Atlanta Braves lineup does provide a lot of righties in there. So it's just the lefties we have to worry about. And with that being said, let's go ahead and transition over to bats. Enough talk about pitching. Let's figure out some bats that we want to play today. It's an interesting slate for pitching. I think it's a little bit clear-cut compared to some other playoff slates. There's not as much of a crowded space in the elite tier, and then the pricing disparities kind of make it easy for me to pick who I want to play. And more specifically, when we start figuring out the bats that we want to play and what price tier they're in, I think we can just go ahead and pick the pitchers in that price tier and roll with it. So, let's go ahead and start breaking down some bats that we want to target. As always, I like to start my sheet by SIERA, skill interactive ERA, to figure out the worst pitchers on the slate in SIERA and the guys we can target with bats. And the worst is actually in Sandy Alcatera, who I just promoted as a pitching option, but we can also target him with bats. And the walk rate is an issue. He has a 33.7 hard hit rate, which isn't terrible, but he doesn't really strike anyone out, and the swing strike rate's low, and he has a walk issue. So he can get himself in some predicaments that he's pitch out of. And when you're taking on this Atlanta Braves team, that's not really what you want to deal with. And then specifically, I'd said, he's really good against right-handed hitting. So when looking at somebody against lefties, that's when things get bad. He has a 325 WOBA, a 36.8% hard hit rate, a 417 slugging. So I can promise you one thing, I want to have a ton of interest today in Freddie Freeman in the 2 spot for these Atlanta Braves. He's an elite hitter overall, and he just rakes. And then we have Ozzie Albies and Nick Marchakis. Those are going to be my favorite options. I mean, less so Nick Marchakis because he's not really a guy with pop, and he's at the bottom of the order. However, he's a good salary relief option, and the fact that he is lefty and Alcatera struggles with splits and we can get him for cheap, I just really like him as a salary relief option. So he's not a top priority of mine, but if I'm needing the salary, I think he makes a lot of sense. And then, of course, you want to target the elite bats in the middle of the order. Ronald Acuna, Marcell Ozuna, and Travis d'Arnaud when stacking up this team. And then don't forget about Adam Duvall. He's been great all season long. And you could throw in Dansby Swanson at shortstop to fill that if you'd like, but he'd probably be least priority for me. Second on the list of target is that in Sean Manaea, taking on these Houston Astros. And when looking at Manaea's splits, you can see he's very good against lefties, but he struggles against righties, and that's going to fare well for these Houston Astros because they definitely have some righties we could target. He's got a 41.7% hard hit rate, a 387 slugging. Ground ball and fly ball stuff isn't the greatest, and then he just doesn't strike anyone out with an 18.6% K rate. So Sean Manaea taking on the Houston Astros definitely could have interest in him. And when looking at the Astros, not Sean Manaea, I'm sorry. Definitely got interest in Houston Astros bats. The righties, so George Springer, Jose Altuve, Alex Bregman would be my favorite option. Yulieski Gurriel, Carlos Correa, and Martin Maldonado. Martin Maldonado is definitely a catching option I'd have a ton of interest in just because he's pretty good against left-handed pitching, and we never really have catchers that we love. So he definitely would be one I want to point out on today's slate. Moving further along the list, we can see that Deivi Garcia definitely has some issues against right-handed hitting. I had mentioned it earlier, but I want to make sure that's clear. He's given up a 513 slugging, a 344 WOBA, a 38.9% fly ball rate, and a 35.2% ground ball rate. So when looking at the Rays lineup, I'm definitely going to have a priority in targeting these righties at the top of the lineup in Yandy Diaz, Randy Arozarena, Manuel Margot, and Willie Adames. I have interest in all those guys. And then Mike Zunino, you can use to fill out your lineups at the catcher position as well. Definitely prioritize those righties from that team. And then, of course, the Yankees could have to go to the bullpen, and their arms are throwing in might be worse against lefties. So we don't want to leave out the elite bats in our stacks, which would include Brandon Lowe and, G-Man Choi. Those guys in the middle of the order, you don't want to leave out necessarily. But if I'm not fully stacking up the team, I would leave them out just because of the starting pitcher matchup and how he fares in the splits category. And then, the next spot that really stands out splits-wise is that in Chris Paddock and his ability to give up a lot of slugging against left-handed hitting. He gives up a 443 slugging, a 40.8% hard hit rate. That's not good. That's by far worse on the slate outside of Devi's issues against, right-handed bats. And I'm definitely going to have interest in these Dodgers lefties today. So it might be kind of more of an obvious spot, but I have to point it out because it makes a ton of sense to target these Dodgers lefties. Corey Seager, Max Muncy, Cody Bellinger. Edwin Rios in the 9 spot has been a guy that's absolutely crushed for a young kid, and I definitely would have a ton of interest in him at only 2.7K. He's definitely a good salary relief option. So all of these lefties I have interest in, and then when you're looking at Chris Paddock slugging against righties, it's not like it's a ton better. And the fly ball and ground ball stuff isn't great either. So I tend to think that these Dodgers are, one of my favorite stacks. I tend to think that they're going to be popular, but for good reason. They mash. They're in a good spot. Mookie Betts, Justin Turner, Will Smith, Chris Taylor, AJ Pollock, you could toss all them in. I would say I do tend to target Justin Turner against left-handed pitching. At 4.3K, I might want to play a different third baseman there, but I definitely have interest in these Dodgers today. So, and then this is when things get a little bit not as great because we're picking pitchers with good ground ball and fly ball rates in Framber Valdez and Max Fried. We're picking on these guys and they're better in the ground ball and fly ball stuff, which we don't prefer when we're playing daily fantasy sports. So we want the guys that are going to hit the home runs. So, with that being said, the two of them have similar matchups, and we want to target the righties that match lefties. So, break down real quick in these lineups who that would be. Starling Marte, Jesus Aguilar, Brian Anderson, Garrett Cooper. The center of this order for the Miami Marlins would be my priority if I'm stacking up them. And then for the Oakland A's, it would be Ramon Laureano, Mark Canha, Chad Pinder, Chris Davis, and then you got Steven Piscotty and Sean Murphy at the bottom of the order. Those righties. Oh, and then don't forget about Marcus Semien. So the A's do match up well against left-handed pitching. It's just the ground ball and the fly ball rate so impressive, and the same thing applies for the Marlins taking on Max Fried. So, not the greatest spots, but it's a smaller slate, it's playoffs, and we do have to stack up those teams. So that's where I'd go with those guys. And then if you're looking to get contrarian, Walker Bueller and Tyler Glasnow would be the guys you want to target. And when we're looking at their splits, I already mentioned Tyler Glasnow does struggle more against right-handed hitting, which is great for us when stacking up the Yankees because that's what they supply us a lot with, those righties. So you're probably going to get these guys low-owned, and they might be a good spot to go to because they do have some right-handers that can mash here. So, DJ LeMahieu, Aaron Judge, Luke Voigt, Giancarlo Stanton, Gio Urshela, Gleyber Torres, Gary Sanchez. All those guys have a ton of power. You can definitely get them low-owned in this matchup, and it could pay off in a big way for you. So you're going to pay for them, but I do think it makes sense as a contrarian thing, and maybe even just throwing in one or two of them, throwing in an Aaron Judge, an elite hitter like him, and feeling good about him as a one-off at low ownership. And then Walker Bueller is kind of similar. He's a little better against righties, but he's really good against lefties, so we actually do prefer to target him with right-handed bats. So if I'm looking to throw in a right-handed bat against Walker Bueller, these Padres definitely supply us with some elite right-handed bats. I'm sure we all know Fernando Tatis at this point. And then you got Manny Machado, Tommy Pham, Will Myers, and Austin Nola. So those are the contrarian plays. Those are the guys I would throw in. If I'm looking to be contrarian, those righties. And it's not like we feel bad playing a Yankees bat or a San Diego Padres bat. They're both lineups that are capable of going out there and crushing. So, yeah, definitely could play them and feel good about being contrarian today. That is about all of my breakdown. As always, before I let you guys go, I do have to give you my home run call of the day. And we had gone over Paddock splits and him taking on the Los Angeles Dodgers. And I definitely have interest in targeting these lefty Dodgers bats. So, yeah, it's just, the two spots that really stand out to me from a home run call aspect would be, I was also thinking about the Atlanta lefty splits, but, I just have to go with a Los Angeles Dodgers left-handed bat. I just have to do it, and without a doubt, it's going to be that and Max Muncy in the 4 spot at 4.8K on DraftKings. I think he's going deep today. When you look at the slugging, I always like to go back and show you guys my reasoning. Chris Paddock, a 40.8% hard hit rate, a 4.43 slugging, not good against lefties, and Max Muncy crushes. So I think it makes sense. I think I've given you guys my reasoning, and I think that you can feel confident playing a lot of Max Muncy in your lineups today. So that's all for me on this breakdown of this ALDS, NLDS, MLB DFS slate. I would appreciate it if you'd leave a like, subscribe to the channel if you're enjoying the content. That way you won't miss any new content I post. Hit the notification bell. You'll be notified anytime I upload a new video. I'll be here all postseason long. And like I said, feel free to leave a comment if you're looking for some lineup builder shows or anything like that going forward. I'm open to trying new things. I want to keep you entertained during these playoffs, and I want to provide you with valuable content. Hit the like button. Hit the subscribe button. I appreciate you guys tuning in. I wish you all the best of luck tonight, and have a good one.